Ladies and gentlemen, the blue line on the screen represents all of the money in the world that is currently liquid. It's called the Global Liquidity Index, and it has an extremely strong correlation with Bitcoin price action as well as traditional market price action. Historically, whenever this chart has spiked to the upside, we have seen a Bitcoin bull market. Currently, the chart is spiking to the upside once more, and guess what? We're seeing a Bitcoin bull market. But the Global Liquidity Index is not just useful at vaguely identifying vaguely macro bullish or vaguely macro bearish market environments. It's also incredibly useful, potentially, on local timeframes. If we look at the daily chart here, we look at the price action since 2022, we see that the Global Liquidity Index seems to be front-running the Bitcoin price action, meaning the Global Liquidity Index goes up, and 2 months later, Bitcoin goes up as well. If this trend continues, it could actually mark the Bitcoin top, or at least predict the Bitcoin top. So that's something we of course need to discuss today. We'll do so in depth. We'll also go ahead and relate the analysis I make today back into the 4-year cycle and come away with some pretty stark conclusions. A lot of people ask me what exchange I use as a trader. I use the Bitunix Exchange, and I don't have a contract with them. I haven't signed anything with them. I don't work for them. I advertise them on my own accord. With my referral link down below, you can get a 15% trading fee discount permanently attached to your account, as well as up to 8,000 USDT in rewards just by signing up with my link down below. Why would you sign up? Well, it's global, it's non-KYC, it's never been hacked before, it's got all of the functions and pairs that you would expect for a major exchange. For that reason, I use it. And I implore you to consider using it as well. Sign up with my link to help out the channel, help out yourself. Cheers. Right, so I'm going to start out with the Global M2, which again is basically a chart that measures all of the money in the world that is liquid currently. And we can overlay that on top of the Bitcoin chart as we've done here, and we can see very strong correlations forming. We'll look at that on a macro level, then we'll look at that on a more cyclical level, looking specifically at this bull market since 2022, and we'll draw some conclusions from both timeframes. Right, okay, Global Liquidity Index, all the money in the world liquid. We know that when money comes into circulation, it flows straight into assets because the creation of money, people say, oh, money gets printed. It's kind of oversimplifying what happens. Money is created through debt, okay? And when people take out debt, they're taking out debt to purchase assets. So the first place money goes when it's created is to assets. And that's why you see such a strong correlation here. When new money is created, as you can see, this blue line moving upwards is the creation of new money, essentially, or liquid money. That basically means that money is going straight into assets. And that's why we see assets moving with this blue chart right here. And when we see downturns in assets, we see the blue chart starting to stagnate, not necessarily going downwards, but stagnating at least. And then it spikes to the upside. We see charts move to the upside as well. The exact same correlation exists across traditional markets. But it also, of course, since this is a Bitcoin channel, a cryptocurrency channel, we're looking at crypto today. So we see the bull markets on crypto line up with the creation of new money. We see the bear markets line up with slowdowns in the creation of new money. Fundamentally, that's what it is. It's a little bit simplified, but that's basically what's happening. By the way, this is why the 4-year cycle is so convincing, because it's not just a Bitcoin chart trend that we've identified, right? It's, first of all, it's many, many trends under one big umbrella trend. But second of all, it's the 4-year cycle only exists due to the timing of things like the Global Liquidity Index. Okay, the fact that the Global Liquidity Index lines up with the 4-year cycle, something that has nothing to do with cryptocurrency, completely separate to cryptocurrency, shows us that the 4-year cycle is more than just a crypto thing. Okay, it's actually a global financial market thing, a global economic thing, really. And that's why when the 4-year cycle breaks, it will break eventually, but when it breaks, it will be such a big deal because not only are we breaking a very strong cryptocurrency trend, which has told us so much about Bitcoin historically, but we're also potentially deviating from traditional market structures that have existed for decades at this point. But anyway, let's get back to the Global Liquidity Index. As I've established, this chart pretty much tells us when bull markets and bear markets are occurring, more or less. And we have seen now in the last, let's say, 8 months, the first real major spike upwards in the Global Liquidity Index. That is big because historically when that spike upwards has occurred, that's when the parabolic bull market has begun for Bitcoin. So what I could be revealing to you here is a potential explanation of why Bitcoin has been moving so strangely over the last 2 or 3 years since the bear market bottom. You know, Bitcoin has been moving upwards. It's been in a bull market, but it's been in a very weird bull market, kind of chopping up and then consolidating for 8 months, chopping up, consolidating for 7 months, doing that over and over again. It hasn't been parabolic. It's just been a very step-by-step move. Move to the upside, consolidation, move to the upside, consolidation. Not like what we've seen in 2017 where it was just straight upwards, or 2021 where it was just straight upwards. It's been a lot more tame. And a potential explanation for that could be, it doesn't really matter what the explanation is, by the way, but a potential explanation for that could be the fact that the global liquidity index hasn't seen its jump to the upside as early as what it saw in prior cycles. And it's seeing it now, right? 8 months ago, we saw that first real leap to the upside in global liquidity. And that's an intensely bullish sign for the market. Now, that could mark, potentially, the end of the 4-year cycle, because potentially we could see an elongated cycle. We could see the cycle continue onwards for longer than normal. But I'm not willing to make any claims about that until I actually see evidence of it occurring. Because so far, the evidence is the 4-year cycle works every time. And I'm not going to be the person who says, oh, this time's different, because everyone who's ever said that has been wrong. So I'm a very big believer that we stick to the 4-year cycle until it's proven wrong. But it goes without saying, the fact that the global liquidity index is spiking to the upside here is a very, very good sign for continued Bitcoin performance to the upside. And if we zoom into a more local level and we can make it even more relevant to this current cycle, we see some interesting correlations forming. We see the global liquidity index front-running Bitcoin price action. So let's just go right back to 2022. We see the global liquidity index bottoming out about, let's say, through 2 months later, Bitcoin bottoms out in the same structure. We see the global liquidity index enter a sideways consolidation that lasts from January all the way through to the breakout point let's just go from the breakdown point to August. That's an 8-month consolidation. On Bitcoin, we see a consolidation lasting from January through to about October, a 10-month consolidation. Very similar in structure there. Very similar in the fact that we have 3 peaks on Bitcoin. We had 3 peaks in the global liquidity index as well. So you can see these similarities start to form, and they continue all the way through into the current price action, right? We see the global liquidity index topping out here in December. About 2 or 3 months later, Bitcoin does so. Global liquidity index consolidates for months on end. Bitcoin does the same. Global liquidity index starts moving upwards around August. Bitcoin does so in around November. So we see this kind of trend forming where basically the global liquidity index is doing what Bitcoin will do about 2 or 3 months early. It's basically foreshadowing Bitcoin's price action. You know, we see it all the way up to here. Global liquidity index topping out in October. Bitcoin topping out in December, about a 2-month delay, but the same kind of structure. Global liquidity index rounding out, Bitcoin rounding out as well and moving to the upside. Okay, now with this 2-month delay, that basically tells us that Bitcoin, if it's going to keep following this pattern, will not top out until the global liquidity index has been topped out for 2 months. Now, the global liquidity index has been in an upwards trend and it's recently reached a kind of peak over here in July. If Bitcoin is going to top out, it would do so around September according to this pattern, which means we have some more room to run to the upside. Not to mention the fact that the global liquidity index could keep running and then that 2-month cycle kind of gets kicked down the road even further. Again, eventually it comes to a point where if the global liquidity index keeps running higher and higher and higher, we have to take into account that the 4-year cycle says we top regardless of what this micro pattern on the global liquidity index says. But that's something we can, a bridge we can cross when we get there. The point I'm trying to make is this. The global liquidity index is foreshadowing Bitcoin price action, and it's in an aggressive rally to the upside currently, meaning it's quite unlikely that Bitcoin is topped out, and it's quite likely that Bitcoin has higher to go. So this is something I'll be tracking closely. I'll be looking closely at the short-term movements of the global liquidity index. We want to be seeing new highs being made here, and the more highs that are made on the global liquidity index, the more highs are likely to be made on Bitcoin until that pattern proves to be wrong, until that pattern falls apart, which we have no evidence of it right now. So overall, things are looking quite good from a macroeconomic perspective, as shown by the global liquidity index, and looking quite good as well from a regular charting perspective, which we discuss every video. I'll discuss that regular charting perspective again tomorrow, of course. Short-term developments have been quite interesting over the last day or so. Bitcoin breaking upwards from a short-term bearish market pattern, breaking up from a neckline of resistance and seemingly looking to flip that neckline of resistance for support. That would be great if it occurs. I want to give the charts more time to develop before I discuss that anymore. We've also seen on a local level here, due to Bitcoin brushing up against very strong macro resistance at 125,000, we've seen Ethereum investors kind of stand back a little bit, and Ethereum dominance has kind of paused on a local level, which is quite interesting because Ethereum has been the dominant force in the market. That's something we'll discuss more in tomorrow's video as well. There's a very rational reason for that, and that's literally because people are waiting for Bitcoin to move before they dive into aggressive buys, given how close Bitcoin is to resistance. We're entering a high-risk buying zone, and during high-risk buying zones, usually you just want to wait for it to be low-risk again. You want to wait for the breakout, wait for the validation, and then buy a little bit higher. That makes a lot more sense to a lot more people, and that's why we're seeing that pause in Ethereum dominance. But that's something I'll discuss with charts tomorrow. And it's not a concern on any real medium or long-term time frame. It's very normal, so no stress there. I'm happy to wait for the charts to develop a bit more to discuss that. Guys, thank you for watching. Really hope you enjoyed. Please check out the Bitunix Exchange, and I'll catch you tomorrow. A lot of people ask me what exchange I use as a trader. I use the Bitunix Exchange, and I don't have a contract with them. I haven't signed anything with them. I don't work for them. I advertise them on my own accord. With my referral link down below, you can get a 15% trading fee discount permanently attached to your account, as well as up to 8,000 USDT in rewards just by signing up with my link down below. Why would you sign up? Well, it's global. It's non-KYC. It's never been hacked before. It's got all of the functions and pairs that you would expect for a major exchange. For that reason, I use it. And I implore you to consider using it as well. Sign up with my link to help out the channel, help out yourself. Cheers.